Call to order Belville Board of Commissioners regular meeting Monday, June 28th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to welcome everybody here. If we can stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Most gracious Heavenly Lord, we ask you, Father, that you give us the ability to make the right decisions tonight that involves our town and the people of the town. Lord, we ask you to watch over all of us, keep us safe tonight. Guard our first responders, Lord, watch over our soldiers, and we ask it in the most precious name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. We know we have a large crowd. Hopefully we put the primary thing I think most everybody here wants to hear will be up front. We do this in an orderly manner. During the public speaking time that some people have signed up on this, you will be speaking during the open session for the public hearing, not the public speaking side. So when we get started on this, once I go through this and I call for public speaking, anybody's talking about anything other than the rezoning, you will talk first. And then when we get into the zoning aspect of it, and then everybody else will get an opportunity to speak that wants to speak. We try to do our best. You know, we do have a limited amount of time based on how many speakers we do have. We want to try to keep that within reason. If you have valid points, you make them valid points. We want you to have time to say what you'd like to say. But, you know, anytime you get the crowd, one thing, you know, we want everybody to be orderly, not loud. Make sure that everybody can hear what somebody's saying when they come up to the podium. And we will move on with it. We appreciate you being here. Frankly, I'm sorry that we don't have a huge parking lot for everybody to park in. We're working on that. One piece of information I will put out before we get started, most of this is for the townspeople. Of course, the Leland people also enjoy this. You know, we're working on our park constantly. Everybody's been down to the Riverwalk Park. We have just we've been going after the DOT property that's north of where our park is, up to 74. We have just been given those deeds. So they're deeding it over to our public park system, which we already been working on what we're gonna put there, the trails, the walking on the river, boat rides, and other things will be added to the park system. So I hope everybody will come down, keep your eye on our homepage and everything for the Riverwalk. You'll watch and see the progress as it starts. We'll have a big ribbon cutting with people coming down from the state, as well as everybody here. I hope you will show up to see and see the maps of how much area we're taking over. Some of that area there, a lot of it was used, you know, it's got a lot of history behind it. There's 2 Civil War mounds in that area that will come under probably state historical sites. So we want to try to develop so everybody can come out and enjoy it, be able to walk out on the river, come down and relax. So just keep your eyes on that. Now, I've been working, the town's been working on that for about 3 years. It takes a while. But that's one of the good parts. So I will move on to item, well, before we do that, I feel we have one commissioner cannot be here tonight. And I need a motion to excuse him on Mr. David Long. So
I make a motion to excuse Commissioner Long.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks for that. Also, one of our other commissioners, he is running a little bit behind tonight. So I guess we'll go ahead and excuse him. He'll probably walk in the door right about the time we do it. Ryan, everybody have a motion to excuse him.
Make a motion to excuse Commissioner Long.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Now we'll have to bring him back in because he'll walk in the door about 5 minutes. So moving on, is item 3 is approval of the agenda. The commissioners had an opportunity to look over the agenda for tonight. If there's any changes or additions, need to make those motions at this time. If not, could I have a motion to accept the agenda as is?
Motion to accept as is.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda considered routine and to be enacted by one motion without discussion. If a member of the governing body requests discussion of an item, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. If the commission had an opportunity to look over the consent agenda, if there's any items you need to remove or discuss, please let me know. At this time, if not, could I have a motion to accept the consent agenda in its entirety?
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Commissioner Merrill's here.
Less than 5 minutes. Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, sir. Apologies. We put Commissioner Merrill back in.
Make a motion. Commissioner back in.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Commissioner. Glad to see you. Okay, moving on down to item 5 on the public comments. And like I said before, if anything, some people signed up for the rezoning. We signed this. Anybody has anything other than that, it's your time to speak. And I think we have one on here. Is Mr. Sharp? Come forward, sir. Thank you for being here this evening, and the sir, the floor is yours.
Thank y'all for listening. First off, I want to say, I appreciate y'all giving the opportunity to speak on behalf of 6 of us. We park over here on behind this BP store. And we just, I say recently found out that there was an ordinance saying that there's no commercial parking. And so what we look for is some leniency, about some time for us to park, to find somewhere to park. And first off, we really want to continue parking it as long as possible. You know, if y'all have plans on doing something with the property and all of that, we want to try to stay there until those plans come to fruition. It's like I said, it's about 6 truckers that park their truck there. I have two of my own, and the parking there is convenient. It was free at one time. So we, like I said, we want to try to continue parking there as long as we can. And I know that, I know it's a city ordinance saying that we're not supposed to, but we do know that right across from where we park, it is there's a business there, and they do park their commercial vehicles there. They have several commercial vehicles, and we just want that same leniency that they get in the park there. And like I said, once y'all get y'all plans together, we want to be out of the way, and we want to be out of the way. But until then, we want to be there. So, because like I said, I live 2 miles from that parking spot, and it's just really convenient for each and every one of them. So that's what we're looking for.
Are you speaking for all the trucks?
Yeah, because a lot of I do have one other guy. He come in with his baby, and he's the only one that had a chance to make it. Everybody else is out on the road. So.
But as a general rule, we don't make comments near the public side. We listen to you.
Right.
I will tell you this. You need to call out here, and our town manager, Athena, get an appointment through her and sit down with her and I, and we'll go over a few things. I think you need to understand more details with the other truckers,
Right.
On some of the things that are going on. We appreciate you coming to speak tonight. So if you can give her a call, get an appointment set up, and come out here and talk to us. Do that, I appreciate it.
Well, I'll try to get with the truckers, and maybe they can meet them to make the meeting if possible.
That'd be fine. And just do that and call out and get the appointment. And if it's just you, that's fine. We'll sit down and have a discussion.
Right. Thank
Mr.
you.
Sharp, would you state your name and address for the record before me?
Oh, my name is LeVar Sharp. I live at 10335 South Old Town Lane, right on the corner.
I know. You're a good man.
All right, thank y'all. Y'all have a wonderful night.
Thank you, sir. Look forward to talking to you.
Thank
Anybody else to make any comments? It's not here for the rezone.
Any chance we could raise the value? Can't hear.
Can't hear. Probably lean over talk. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just going to, I have to lean over a little. That'll stretch the mic. We don't have as many people in here, so normally they talk about sitting up front 2 or 3 a year. Okay, well, I did one thing, right, show open up public comments. Can I have a motion to close public comments?
I'll make a motion, open and close.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Okay, now we're getting down to the part I think everybody's here for. Under item 6, under public hearings, public hearing number 1, public hearing is for the purpose of consideration act upon a rezone request made by Walter P. Avery to rezone 24.85 acres located on Pool Road in Belville, North Carolina, from industrial to business residential. 3 parcels of land will be involved with this. And if I could, Madam Town Manager, comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a report to read into the record. This rezoning is for property that's located on Pool Road. I'm sorry. This rezoning is for property that's located along Pool Road, parcel ID 0470036, 047003608, and 3609, 24.85 acres. The request is to rezone the property from industrial to business residential. Properties along the north are located within the town of Leland's jurisdiction and are zoned residential. To the south, industrial and business highway within the town of Belville's jurisdiction. To the east, located within the town of Leland's jurisdiction and zoned commercial. And to the west, located within the town of Belville and zoned industrial. Mr. Walter P. Avery, our applicant on behalf of CMIS Properties Fayetteville LLC and Company Land LLC, is requesting to rezone this property. He has already appeared before the Belville Planning Board and received a favorable recommendation. The staff also recommends that the Board of Commissioners approve the proposed rezoning. And if you have any questions, the staff is available. Thank you.
ma'am. Okay, this time, if we could, we can have some comments from the applicant, Mr. Avery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Commissioners. My name is Walter P. Avery. My address is 3807 Peachtree Avenue, Suite 200, Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm employed by McKinney as Vice President, and I'm here representing CMIS Properties LLC, CMIS Properties Fayetteville LLC, which is a locally owned Wilmington company, not just because it says Fayetteville, and the land company, which is also a locally owned company. As town manager pointed out to you, we had a public hearing earlier this month with the town planning board. I believe you have in the agenda package some sort of statement about what the planning board actually did. I will point out that at that meeting, the board did determine that what we were asking to do was consistent with the criteria set forth in your zoning ordinance. That was also consistent with the town's 2020 vision plan and future land use plan is spelled out in the general kennel plan, which is part of the Brunswick County kennel plan. What we're proposing is business residential from industrial. There's a big difference in those two zoning classifications. Business residential is a relatively new district. Industrial's been there a while. difference in uses is extreme. First of all, in the industrial classification, you can put about 90+ uses out there, some heavy industrial. I can build a 35-foot tall building on 10 acres out there, and it could stretch almost the entire length of the property, which would be 800 feet, 1,000 feet. And that's a pretty big structure. I'm not planning to do that. I'm not here to talk about specific land uses of what we have planned for the property right now, only because this is a general use rezoning request. I'm not able to talk about those things under law. Now, the change in zoning does, what we are doing though is giving up on something. In return, we're asking for business residential, and anything that we do there, whether it's for residential use or business use, we have to get a special use permit issued by this board. So this is just the first step in a long set of steps that we're walking through now, as we seek to get this property rezoned to business developed property. Again, we're not able to talk about specific land uses, and until we do get to that point of special use permit, if we get that far, then there's no need to talk about traffic patterns or what we have planned or what utilities are there. We know all these things to some degree. We haven't committed to anything yet, but we are getting close to putting together some plans, and those will be in here eventually if we get the property rezoned. I would just like to go over a couple of quick criteria that the planning commission, I think this is pretty important for this particular rezoning because your ordinance requires adherence to 7 criteria for rezoning the property. First being that the meets requirements of general statutes of North Carolina, which we do, we think we do. I haven't heard anything to the contrary that we didn't. We meet the challenges of the changes that are going on in the general area. The development pattern out there is stagnant at the current time in terms of the industrial zoning. There's not a lot of new development going on in the industrial class. Everything that we've seen lately has been some sort of a business nature and further away from the property, some residential uses as well. But we think because of those trends that the property is more appropriately used in the future for some sort of business residential and not industrial uses. We're also giving up, in addition to about 90+ uses that we're allowed to have now by right, without any other hearings other than site plan approvals, about 90 uses, and we're paring that down to about 26 uses, all by 26 uses, 25 of those require special use permit. And the only one that doesn't is a foster home. We're not building foster. No, we'll talk about that. Number 3, as I pointed out earlier, the proposed rezoning is consistent with policies for your land use plan, the panel plan. Number 4, the town and others that provide services are aware of what their service capabilities are out there. We're aware of what service capabilities we might need, depending on how the property is built. So that's being addressed to some degree, but we'll address that in much more detail when we get to the special permit phase of this project, if we get that far. We don't think it'll create adverse impacts on the natural environment. Obviously, anything you do on an existing piece of property, some trees would have to be removed. There is some environmental impact in that regard. But the fact that you can't put industrial uses out there or any smokestack type activities certainly is a plus, because we don't want to do that anyway, but it could be done. We're just not doing that. But we don't think it'll create any adverse effects on air quality. Stormwater, we have stormwater allocation for part of that property. One part of that property would have to have its own stormwater pond. And as far as road improvements, at some point, whether we build it, the property as it's currently zoned or under business residential, we'll have to do some road improvements. School roads is a mess. We all know that. And we've had some sessions to talk about how we can make some improvements out there, but we haven't committed anything as a group yet. But we know as a developer, we will eventually have to do something to that road. Because if we put a nice project there, you can't have a rickety road to access that property. Number 6, we don't think it creates creates negative impacts on adjacent properties. I know there's a lot of residential uses to the north of Watford. Most of that property is zoned, I believe, R6. There's about 4.5, 5 units an acre per dwelling unit. on that. It's all mostly single family adjacent to that. There's a mixture of homes attached and otherwise in Waterford, but the homes that are most nearby are all single family, are all on the north side of the property. And last but not least, we think the property is rezoned. If rezoned is suitable for this property, Katrina suggests that it needs to be, for it to ever be developed for something productive and something useful for the town and be an asset to the town, rezoning is really needed. You can't do it under the industrial classification. We respectfully request that you approve our rezoning request from industrial to business residential. Any questions?
Any questions from the commission? Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, there's not any other comments, any comments from staff or?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to stress one thing before we get into the public comment part of this. I think we discussed this briefly at the public hearing, I think, and some of you may have been here for the planning board public hearing. The question for the board tonight, this is a rezoning request and it's a legislative hearing. So you can talk to them about all kinds of policy reasons why you think it should or shouldn't be rezoned from industrial to business residential. But one thing the board's not allowed to consider is whether Mr. Avery and his group's plans are good plans or bad plans. Because they're not allowed to consider any specific use. What we're required to do, the board's required to do, is compare that table of uses that you can do under the business residential with the table of uses that you can do under industrial, and decide which one of those table of uses is a better fit for these parcels. And I think Mr. Avery, and one thing you may not have caught what he mentioned right there, there's only one use under business residential that you can do without coming back for a permit with some conditions on it, and that's a foster home. We have no clue whether he's going to build a foster home or not, and we couldn't consider it if he told us he was. But under industrial, there are plenty of uses that you really don't want in your backyard. You could, for example, have a strip club. Only zoning for places allowed in this town is industrial. I just noticed pesticide or chemicals, pesticides, and fertilizers. You can build a warehouse to store those, and you wouldn't have to come back to the town council for approval for that. So there are all kinds of things. I stress to you, that's the question that the board's looking at. And certainly there are valid reasons probably, or have been, why it was zoned industrial, but that's the issue for you. So please, if you really feel like getting it off your chest and standing up and ask, why don't you tell us what you're doing with it? I certainly can't stop you from doing that, but I'll tell you, it's a waste of time to ask that question because they're not allowed to consider it tonight. Now, if Mr. Avery, and I'm just saying for the sake of argument, if it is approved for rezoning, and his group comes back for a conditional use permit later for one of those things other than a foster home, that would be a great time for you to come and voice those concerns about what conditions you'd like to see put on one of those uses. For example, if they were going to build a multifamily thing there, you could come and talk about all the requirements that you think ought to be put in place to make it fit the conditions in the town zoning ordinance. Tonight's just not the night for that. So tonight is the night for you to talk about the reasons that you think this should or should not be rezoned from industrial to business residential. And I'm not, we don't have our thumb on either side of the scale here. This is not like a quasi judicial hearing where they're limited only to sworn evidence. You can get up and talk about policy reasons why you think it's a good idea or a bad idea. But I just want to tell you, that's the question for this table of uses versus that table of uses. So with that in mind, please have that.
Thank you, sir. And I think he expressed it as good as we can, because like I said, tonight is just about the rezone. So if we could, Commissioner, I have a motion that we open the public hearing in, reference to public hearing number 1.
So,
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Who would like to be the first person to speak? I have some people that signed up on the board who still like to speak. You have that. I got Is it Susanna?
Suzanne.
Suzanne, would you like to speak first, please? You come up, you please state your name and your address, please.
My name is Suzanne Root. I live at 1141 Spring Glen Court in Waterford in Leland. My husband Eric was originally scheduled to speak tonight, but unfortunately he had a prior commitment that he could not reschedule. And he's asked me to speak for him in the prepared statement that he made. And I just want to apologize in advance. We're going to be talking about exactly what you said, what we shouldn't talk about. But, you know, I think the main thing is that we understand that the zoning, this is just a zoning issue for tonight. But what we would like as residents of that area that are going to be directly affected, that we be able to be included on any input for whatever their plans may be in the future for it. With that said, I'd just like to read his statement, and then I'll get out of here. By the way, if I sound nervous, there's a reason why I got a C- in high school speech. So, just saying. Okay. So my husband wrote this statement for y'all. In my presentation before the planning board, I noted that there were 4 concerns with the rezoning of the parcels 0470036, 047003608, and 3609. Those were 1, a concern about the fin or architectural style of what would be built. 2, safety concerns related to new construction without a wall or some mechanism to prevent people from wandering onto our property. 3, privacy concerns from a construction where its height will allow others to see over our berm and into our yard and homes. The increased traffic congestion will also certainly follow, which has already become a situation for us as it is, the way it is now. As I noted in the consideration of Mayfair, the residents surrounding that project are still waiting for their traffic problems to be addressed after more than 8 years of petitioning their government. In response to the privacy concerns, Mr. Avery suggested that any new construction will only be 35 feet. The impression is that such a construction would not be able to see over the berm and into our property. That is factually untrue. 35 feet is 3 stories. For those who have seen the Hawthorne at Leland located between Plouffe Road and the 17, those units are 3 stories. If something like that is slated to be built in any one of the 3 parcels under consideration for rezoning, tenants will be able to peer into our property. The brief comments I would like to make this evening deal specifically with the town articles related to business residential. According to Article 5 and 5.1.6a, increased pedestrian activity is part of the requirement. This raises questions related to our berm, but as stated before, increased pedestrian uses means increased traffic. The permitted by right usages in the BR zone noted in Article 5, Table 5.1 are one and one only, family foster homes. The special use allowances from the same table are townhouses, multifamily dwellings, cottage industry, parks, playgrounds, professional offices, spas, health clubs, medical offices, country clubs, circuses, festivals, carnivals, restaurants, shopping centers, convenience stores, barbershops, nurseries, etc. Get the point. All of these are special use, which is defined as generally compatible with the land use permitted in the zoning district. Even though a special use proposal has to go through additional steps to be approved, the special uses that these properties will be able to build are plenty, and not all of them conducive to the property owners near this zone in Waterford. If the owners of the property wish to consider the input of the property owners, they will not just give us the limited hearing we had during a town hall event, but include us in the proceedings directly. We could form a committee of representatives from the various properties affected and give input when they propose their building plans. We'd like to have this input before the submission stage. This is particularly important because the city lines make us a resident of Leland, not Belleville. The nature of the building and the businesses that will be going in the now vacant land, combined with the safety privacy issues as well as the traffic problem, has not been addressed. And we want our input before the fact. And that's all I have to say. And I'd just like to say thank you very much to the board and to you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing us to be here this evening and to voice our concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the next one, I think Forrest and Carol. Dowdy, Doody, D-O-D-Y,
Those are written.
that written? Okay.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a prepared statement from the Dowdies
Okay.
for duties, which are, this is from Forrest and Carol Duty, 1026 Golden Sands Way, Leland, to the Town of Belville, 62421. I'm writing to express my concerns and to voice my opposition to rezoning parcels 0470036, 047003608, and 047003609 from Industrial 1 to Business Residential VR located on Pool Road in Belleville. We purchased the property at 1026 Golden Sands Way, Leland, North Carolina, as our final retirement home. We are happy with the neighborhood and with the covenants that protect our investment quality of life that Waterford has to offer. Rezoning the land to allow for multi-story residential development, be it condos or apartments, will have a very detrimental impact on our quality of life. We have one of the largest backyards abutting the property in question. We spent thousands of dollars to fence in the entire backyard to ensure our privacy. I'm able to allow the dog to run freely, tend my garden, and barbecue without being observed by abutting neighbors sitting on their second or third floor balconies. In addition to losing our privacy, which we value greatly, we will be subjected to having uninvited guests who will be listening to music, having a cocktail, and entertaining friends, essentially sitting in my backyard. We will hear normal conversations from the balconies looming over our private space. Such development will significantly decrease the value of my property. I would not have bought it knowing that I would lose my privacy and will have difficulty selling it because of high density residential intrusion. It is not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. I am concerned about the extra traffic that will be added to an already overburdened infrastructure. It is already a challenge to get Highway 17. Additional traffic that will come from densely populated residential use apartments or condos will result in gridlock. I'm also concerned about the negative impact of replacing acres of full-grown pine trees with pavement and buildings. This locale is a fragile, boggy ecosystem. It is precious green space that needs to be preserved. We don't need more water in our ponds or in my backyard. There are many open areas in and around Belleville and Leland that would be much more amiable to such mixed-use zoning. Waterford is a well-established neighborhood of very attractive, well-maintained single-family homes that adds value to the greater Belleville Leland community. I did attend the June 8th meeting to discuss the proposed change, but was not allowed to speak. Prior to the meeting, my neighbor and I were invited to join Mayor Mike Allen in his office to express our concerns with him. He listened attentively and urged us to make our views known to the board during public discussion. The letter we received from the town stated, among other things, that interested parties may appear at the hearing and comment on the proposed rezoning. There was a mention of a requirement to seek permission to speak prior to the meeting. I was stunned when the public portion of the meeting was closed without allowing for comments. It made a mockery of our attendance and left us with the feeling it was academic exercise with a foregone conclusion to recommend rezoning for the benefit of the developer. I will hand carry this to the town office before 2 p.m. the day of the meeting to make certain my views are on record as being opposed to the request for the rezoning. Thank you in advance for your favorable consideration. Forrest and Carol Duty, 1026 Gold Sands Way, Leland, North Carolina.
Okay, next on the list is, I think Dale and Deborah Summers. They're not, are they here?
Pass.
Pat,
Yes.
Ken Dale, the Ken Dale. Okay, does anybody else would like to say anything?
I just have one question. I'm not on the list. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, come on up, sir. That's what this is all about.
My name is Dino Abelli, and I live at 1046 Golden Sands Way in Leland in the Waterford community. I'm not a politician, haven't been through this stuff before, but with all the vagaries by Mr. Avery, and we could do this or not, and we can do this, but we probably won't. How in God's name did you guys just agree to rezone? That's my question. That's it.
Can I take it?
Good question.
To answer your question, the answer, for rezoning, again, the question isn't whether he's got a good plan or a bad plan for it. We just compare two tables of uses, and that's what you're looking at for that area. Is the use of that area now more in line with the business residential zoning or an industrial one? So industrial. Believe me, it would be easier on a board if they were able to consider what he was planning on doing. But we're not. The reason I'm telling them and you that is to keep them out of trouble if they asked him, hey, what are you planning on doing with this? Because a vote one way or another about what he's planning on doing, we're not allowed to do that in the rezoning stage. And just the last speaker, the last two, had great points to make that you would want to make at a rezoning, not a rezoning hearing, a conditional use hearing. If you get, assuming a property like this is rezoned, unless the property owners want to build a foster home there, any of the other 25 uses, they're gonna have to come back in front of the planning board first, and then the town board for a conditional use permit. And those conditional use permits get to address the things like what impact this is gonna have on the neighboring properties, and what things can we do to mitigate that? Privacy concerns, environmental concerns. I think I heard somebody talk about drainage issues, traffic. I'm gonna warn you ahead of time. Traffic is a special issue with conditional use permits. You have to have basically a traffic engineer to testify about what impacts those would be. That's true for both the applicant and for the people who are opposed to it. So I don't want anybody to be surprised when we get back in front of me if we get to that point. Now I tell the crowd that, and then they want to throw produce at me and the board because we cut them off on those issues. But those are the things that we're looking at. The board right now is just looking at comparing two tables of uses and trying to figure out which tables of uses are more in line with this. And the last speaker, for example, talked about some of the uses that are permitted in business residential and how these things would be good or bad ideas. That's a good way to look at it. That's kind of the issue. That is the issue that the board's asked to look at. They're not the property owners, it's their property at the end of the day. And I know all of you are interested, but let's face it, their property's theirs and yours is yours. And they, within that table, or those two tables, are allowed to use it either as a matter of right in some ways or with a conditional use permit in others. And that's the question. Which table of uses is more appropriate for this? So I know that's not what you want to hear today, but if you have questions about the use of it, there will be an opportunity for anything other than debating, in case of business residential, a foster home. I hope that helps clear up the water for us a little bit so that we're not here all night arguing or debating issues that really we're not allowed to consider.
Okay, thank you for that. And like we said, we'll reiterate again, tonight, we're only talking about if we're gonna rezone the property. has nothing to do with the regular use. And I think Mr. Avery wants to make a few more comments, but if you want to, sir,
Please, thank you.
podium's yours.
I just, excuse me. I just want to respond back to the first person that spoke about having meetings with the development team prior to any plant formal submittals to the town board of commissioners. We're open to that. That property, I believe, is managed by, Waterford Association is managed by Seco. It's Property Management Association. I have a person's contact name for that. I can get with the party that spoke earlier and get some information from her. I can give her my information as well. But we're definitely open to talking about what we might try to do there and get their input on the front end. We're happy to do that. But at some point, we're not going to do that, obviously, if we're not going to get property resolved. Other than that, we don't have to.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I hope all of you heard that. That means him and his people they're open to giving you one-on-one if y'all like to discuss it with them directly. But again, after this, there will be more opportunities to come out here and voice your opinion when they get in, if it's a special use permit or whatever we have to do then. Tonight is only about rezoning. Yes.
Quick question. Has it already been decided? Has it been voted on or
No,
not?
sir, it has not. There will be a vote tonight about the rezoning.
You all seem to be talking like it's already been decided.
No, sir, we don't ever do that. We can't do it because we're just like everybody else. We're part of the learning process too. And there's a lot of material. And there's a lot that goes into the rezone. That's the reason it goes to our planning board first. And then we base some of our views, which is the information that we give on the recommendation of the planning board and the recommendation of our staff. Well, that's the reason we have the public hearing, so we can get the input, find out the concerns of the citizens. So it all comes into one piece to make these decisions. Yes, sir.
Will we be notified like we were for this meeting if there's a conditional use permit?
Yes, sir. Any meeting that we have, it will be posted. And I promise you, there will be no meeting about any of the use of that property that the public's not notified. And you'll have an opportunity to voice your opinion. Our town and our staff is always open, so if you do have any questions in the meantime, our staff will be happy to answer those questions for you. Or if you want to know, you don't see the notice posted somewhere, which Lord is posted everywhere, which is a requirement. But our staff will be happy to answer your questions if you call out here at town hall. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question. Does Belville have ordinances against clear cutting? Or an ordinance against clear cutting?
Madam Town Manager?
We do have a tree ordinance.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, and our town engineer could give more information on that. We have protected trees and specimen trees. So anytime there's a project, there's a replacement plan. There's trees that are going to be reviewed. We like to protect the heritage trees in the area. So Mr.
You have
Captain.
her speaking to the microphone. You can hear it.
I apologize. I just wanted to let you know that we do have a tree ordinance. We do have trees that are classified as heritage trees, specimen trees, protected trees in that ordinance. Mr. Jeff Capadona, who's our engineer, could give you more specifics on that. But if there are trees that are going to be removed, we do have requirements as far as a replacement plan for those trees and for the construction. So he could definitely give you more details about that.
Any other questions? Correct. Yes.
You said that there would be a plan for replacement trees. How are you going to replace trees on concrete? You pave it over trees.
Ma'am, I think what we're getting into, no offense, we won't hear from everybody. We're starting to get away from what this purpose is. the other things you're talking about, where it's our tree ordinance, and we have a very strict tree ordinance, I promise you. We have fought that battle, but we don't believe in clear cut. But tonight, we're talking about rezoning. And as long as it's pertinent to that, we want to hear everybody. But there will be another time, if we approve this, whatever the board votes on, for the specifics, we'll have hearings on. Yes,
I just have a question about, you're gonna decide whether it's zoned for the industrial or zoned for business residential.
yes.
Does it make a difference to Belleville whether they have one or the other? Is it money?
We're
Is it more
considering,
money for Belleville to do one or the other?
no, we're considering a request. Just like anybody, if you walk in here and request your property, you want to put something on it, maybe it's not zoned, but where what you want on it can be there. That's anybody can walk in and ask for property to be rezoned. As a board, we're obligated by law to listen to that and make a decision on it.
Howard, what's the criteria for making the decision?
Well, when you look at it, the table of contents, what we're looking, anytime we rezone anything, if it stayed industrial, if we decide to keep it that way, I don't think somebody would be pleased on some of the applications that would come in, what this could be rezoned for. I mean, what could be built on industrial property.
Mayor, if you want me to, the answer to your question about the criteria, they're set out in the ordinance. The proposed rezoning corrects an ambiguity or error or meets the challenge of some changing condition, trend, or fact. Rezoning is consistent with the purposes, policies, intent, and provisions of the comprehensive plan. The town and service providers will be able to provide sufficient services to the subject property. The proposed rezoning will not result in significantly adverse impacts to the environment. There are 7 criteria in the zoning ordinance. But again, the key issue for us is we have to look at the table of uses and look at one table versus another table and decide whether one table is a better fit under those criteria than the table that's in force right now. If you get to a conditional use permit, and look, let's face it, if somebody comes in and asks for rezoning from one type of zoning classification to another, then that ought to tell you that they're trying to their plan is to do something that's not allowed in the current zoning, but would be, at least conditionally, under the new one. The specific plan for a property comes into play if someone comes and asks for a conditional use permit. And that's when the board gets to tailor a conditional use permit to address specific concerns about what a particular use, what impact it's going to have on its neighbors. It's not rezoning. And someone else had a question a few minutes ago about, well, you made up your mind about this. Let me stress to you, this is a legislative hearing. Okay? These board members, if they wanted to, could run on a platform of, I'm going to rezone those properties. So whether they had their mind made up before they came in on this one or not really isn't an issue. In a conditional use permit, they're not allowed to make up their mind because they have to come into it with open mind and hear evidence. This is a legislative decision though. So that's why I was telling you that your comments should be focused on policy issues. Hey, I'm in favor of this being rezoned from I to DR because of X, or I think industrial is better because I like the table of uses in industrial better. Okay, those are the types of concerns that need to be coming out here. And I'm telling you that because that's the issue for the board tonight. So that's where we're going with this. If there are specific concerns you have about a particular use, unfortunately, they're not allowed to consider them here tonight, but they would be later if they were confronted with a conditional use permit. That help?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
I have a question,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry about my accent. If you cannot understand, I can repeat.
I read on the Town of Belville maps that you're supposed to have a 60 feet buffer of trees if it is an industrial. I believe it changed to 50 feet. Is that part of the rezoning? Will you also consider that? Is that off the table? Is that something that it has to stay there? Because, you know, if we put tall trees over there, you know, that would take care of some of the, you know, problems that we might have, okay, about privacy. So is that something that will stay there, the buffer of trees? Or are they gonna build all the way to the park?
If you have, make any comment on that at all?
Not definitively.
Okay. Like I said, we're gonna have to get back to the primary purpose again. I think with drifting, I understand what you're saying in your question. Tonight is about whether the board is gonna rezone the property.
Now, but it's part of the plans that you
Yeah.
already have in there as either one of the tables.
Well, you know, every town, and there's a lot of towns, there's 19 towns in this county. Your town, or the ones that live in Leland, have rezoning issues all the time. And they make decisions for what they think is best for the town. And everybody's not gonna agree with it. But what we're trying to do is do an assessment that we think is correct, and then doing the rezoning, and that's what this board will vote on tonight. And then the rest of it, you will have an opportunity to come up and voice your opinion once based on, and we see exactly what they want to place there, for special use permits or whatever. And we can take the input. Yes. Is anybody else that would like to come up and make some comments?